Welcome to the Northgate Church podcast from the heart of Chester in the UK.
So, hope. I think it's going to be a little bit of activity there. We'll press on regardless. But I'm going to press on regardless. As you can see, there are going to be some activities for the adults later, so you should all have a little pot of things for later. But it's just coming back, just as just looking at it, there is such a need for hope, a real need for hope. Now, you could probably think of examples, but just three. Imagine a young mother struggling to make ends meet, sitting wrapped in a blanket at night, wondering how she's going to provide for her family. And in the silence, she whispers a prayer, just holding on to hope that something will change. And it's that slither of hope that keeps her going, believing that tomorrow just might bring a breakthrough. Or a couple sitting in the hospital day after day whilst they find the correct treatment for their child's life-threatening sickness, continually praying that the great physician will heal their loved one. It's a dark place. Or the young Christian refugee, having got his leave to remain, now finds himself having to live on the street in sub-zero temperatures because the council did not consider him a priority. He's hoping and praying that God will hear his cry and answer him. Those three examples are actually taken from what we know pastorally is going on here. There's some very, very times of darkness and that people are going through and are needing the hope. And many of us, we may not have been in those three situations, but in times of our life, we may feel like the mother, the parent, or that young man, just stuck in the dark, clinging for hope. But it is hope. It's a hope in God that gives us strength to face the unknown. And I know some others are dealing with job insecurity, there are health problems, or waiting for answers from the Home Office. Whatever your situation, we'll just have a look at how God can give us hope in the midst of uncertainty. So, Archbishop Desmond Tutu said, hope is being able to see that there is light despite all the darkness. But biblical hope is different. It's not wishful thinking, but it's confidence in God's promises. Let's look at nature. And what I'm going to do is, I don't know if you can remember Arman, who got baptized last August. And he gave a little testimony. And he shared about being an asylum seeker, having come to the UK, felt depressed and in a dark place during the long wait for the Home Office to assess his case. And he said he felt as if he'd been buried alive. And then God spoke to him and said that he hasn't been buried, rather he's been planted as a seed, and that he will eventually grow and discover the light. He will come through. But that planting, him being planted of a seed, was necessary for him to grow in his life. In Romans 15, it says, "May the God of hope fill you with all joy." Is that it? Yeah. "May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in him, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace and trust in him." And God is saying that in the midst of something, there is a seed of hope that he plants within us. It reminds us that hope comes from God and overflows when we trust him. And there's plenty of examples in the Bible. Again, staying in Genesis 37:50, we've got the story of Joseph. He ended up in a foreign land. He was rejected by his family. He was sold into slavery and imprisoned unjustly. Yet he never lost hope in God's plan. And it was years later, because that had to happen, because years later, Joseph was called by God to save countless lives during a famine. So his dark time, his period of feeling unjustly done to, was actually part of God's redeeming plan later on. And in Genesis 50:20, it says, "What you intended for harm, God intended for good." Actually, that's on the screen, isn't it? I've gone way too far. I can't see a screen. Back a bit. There we go. Yeah, I can't see a screen yet, so I don't quite know where I am. But anyway, but this is an important thing to cling on to. Some things that you think go wrong in our life, God is not out there to do us harm, but they will turn around and do us good. So even when life seems unfair, God is working behind the scenes for our good. And then we've got the Israelites wandering through the wilderness. 40 years they wandered in the wilderness because they had a promise of a new land. Now, some of us have got dreams and promises from God, and it may seem I'm wandering around for a long time. But even if the journey is long and difficult, God's promises are sure, because just like the people there, they were delivered in a miraculous way, into the promised land. And then we've got Jesus at the cross. It seemed that all hope was lost. But the resurrection shows that God's light overcomes even the darkest situations, even a death-like situation. So no matter how dark things seem, the story isn't over, because Jesus brings new life and hope. I'm going to take a risk now. Has anyone got like a little quick testimony that illustrates anything like that in that section? Anyone? Well, there will be time. Anyway, let's just carry on. But as I was saying, our hope isn't coming out of wishful thinking. Our hope is in God. God is the source of hope. Jeremiah 29:11. I know when we did what are people's favourite passages in the Bible about 18 months ago, I think Jeremiah 29:11 came out as one of the top ones. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you a hope and a future. God has a future plan for us. So no matter how dark it seems now, God has a hope and a plan for the future. It doesn't mean, this verse doesn't mean that life will be easy, but it means God is guiding us towards a hopeful future. Has anyone got a testimony on this, a short testimony where they've clung on and they've known God has got a plan for them? I know there are stories here. Yeah.
I came to Chester 21 years ago with 2 children, no home and no job. And God gave me a promise of a future, of a new husband. And it took a long while, 20 years, but I now have a home. I lived with Lynn and Gerald for 8 months, and I just kept trusting God. And God did, whatever you're going through, just hang on to hope, because ultimately He is a wonderful provider and He will come through.
Thank you. Anyone else? Lynn?
Our son, to keep it short, went away from God in his early 20s after university. And in our life group and the leaders of our previous church prayed for a good many years. It was a long time. But God had given us a word, Frank and I a word, that he got his hand on Daniel's shoulder. God had got his hand on Daniel's shoulder. And we prayed and we prayed and we prayed. And even when we couldn't see any fruit, we trusted. And after many years, we could see that God had been working in the background. Even when you can't see anything, God is working in the background. And he came one day and just casually said, oh, by the way, I'm going on an alpha course. And so we very calmly said, oh, that's really good. He always used to say things as he was walking out of the door. And so we said, oh, that's really good. And when he went out of the door, went, yes. And God had been at work all that time. So if there's anyone who thinks nothing is ever going to happen, God is at work. And now he's walking with God and he's married with 2 children and in a church in Shrewsbury. And I still have to pinch myself sometimes when I'm having a spiritual conversation with him. But God was at work.
Amen. You can just put it there. Thank you. I know Helen gave a wonderful testimony last week. Well, we're going to come to this one a little bit later, so we're going to just leave that there for now, okay? I know it's very, very pretty. Yeah, I know Helen gave that lovely testimony, how she and John had been praying for someone and how God, after a long time, just answered her prayer, and it was a miraculous breakthrough, wasn't it? It was a wonderful testimony from last week you gave us, Helen. A very fresh testimony there. God honours our dreams. And there we go. In Matthew 7:11 it says, if you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts for those who ask him? The Bible is full of promises to give us a hope when we believe in him. And it encourages us to have bold, faith-filled prayers for the future. And God walks with us through the dark times. a real source. Psalm 23:4. This can be a real source of real comfort for those who are really going through it, and maybe we've got people in the family with serious health problems. Oh, you're going to do, that's great, do two-sided. Because you can see a rainbow from both sides, can't you? That's okay. There's another one over here, Alex. If you're getting rainbow full, the backs are dropping off. Okay. I think we'll have to complain to Baker Ross then, won't we? There we go.
It wasn't the people that stuck them on.
No, I wouldn't have thought that, Joe. Where am I? Oh, yes. But this is the Psalm 23. I know it's a very popular psalm, and one can draw an awful lot from it. But at times, that verse in verse 4, even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. And that is a really good verse to really hang on when it does seem the lights have gone out. There's no way forward, there's no change, there's been no change, perhaps in a family situation, no change in a health situation, but this is a really good one. I know, well, we've seen it in just within our own international community, particularly when it comes to visas, leave to remain, and you have to wait nearly up to 2 years, and it's so unpredictable, and life is so uncertain. But this is a good one, verse 2, keep hold on. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. And we've seen just in that community, just a lot of answered prayers when it's come to leave to remain and home office interviews. But that's just one section. You know, we've seen it time and time again in the whole of the church community here. And God is not passive. And hope is not passive. Hope is active. For those who are familiar with the story of Nehemiah building Jerusalem in the Old Testament. Now, in chapter 1 in the book of Nehemiah, for those who do know it, it's all about despair and discouragement. But in chapter 2, in spite of great opposition and negative criticism, it says, Nehemiah 2:18, and this is Nehemiah speaking, and I told them of the hand of my God that had been upon me for good, and also of the words that the king had spoken to me. And they said, let us rise up and build. So they strengthened their hands for the good work. One could unpack this quite a bit. But it's really important in times of darkness to have people around you who will speak the positive words into your life and remind you of God's promises, because they'll prop you up under your elbows and help carry you through. We can see this happening in the church here. And that's wonderful thing about this community, that when things get really tough for people, other people come in and help carry people through. But it also is the importance of declaring God's promise. Nehemiah declared God's promise, and he just didn't leave it at that. He got up, he stirred himself into action. So hope isn't sitting back and just waiting for change. It's trusting God and taking what steps you can forward. That's important. It's faith and what we do combined. So how do we cultivate hope? It's looking back at God's faithfulness and just being grateful for what God has done. In Joshua 4, 6 and 7, it says, and they built these stones. And it says, when your children ask, what do these stones mean? Tell them. Well, it's kind of an equivalent is like writing down and reflecting on a moment when God has really provided for you. And you can come back to that. Maybe when times are, it's a bit hard with the family finances, but to look back on how God has provided and have hope that God will see us through again. Yeah, there we go. And just coming back, surrounding yourself with community. Sometimes, and I know it, when things get tough, you want to withdraw, and it's like self-protecting shell, and you cut yourself off from other people. But that's the wrong thing to do, because God has placed us in community for a reason. For two are better than one, it says. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. So the importance of cultivating good, strong friendships, particularly within the church community, but it could be within other social groups. People who will do you good, people who will be positive, who've got your back and will be committed to seeing you through to the end. Has anyone got a testimony of how they've been supported in a time of difficulty? Anyone? Yep, Helen? Ellen, you've got the...
I think if I sat down and thought about it for a while, there would be hundreds and thousands of times. But one that really struck me was it's quite a while ago when myself and my daughter Sarah were going through that tumultuous time after a separation, and we lived in five different houses in a year, and it was really tricky. Anyway, there was one time when we were staying in somewhere just outside Wrexham, and it was a Sunday morning, and I was getting ready for church, and feeling a bit sorry for myself, if I'm honest. Things were a bit dire. And that morning, Teresa Merrick, and Teresa and Andy used to lead Northgate. On a Sunday morning, she had 4 children. Her husband would be getting ready. I know Andy's pattern on a Sunday morning. He's away from the family. He's praising God. He's doing his things, ready for a Sunday morning. We've stayed with Andy and Teresa. We know what happens on a Sunday morning. So Teresa would be getting her 4 children ready for church, solo. And she phoned me up because I was on her heart. I can't tell you what, I thought, you've got 4 children to get ready and you phoned me. And I just thought, Lord, even my tears, you hear and you encourage. I can't tell you what that did for me. I mean, all these years later, and this is about 36, 37 years later, I remember it.
That's great. So it's good to remember that, and it's... Hello.
Hi. I've got one at least that comes to mind, and that is quite a number of years ago I had severe ME, and it wasn't diagnosed and sort of looked at for about 3 years. It was pretty tough, but I went on a treatment program, which was a year's treatment program, and I had to sign consent for it that I would only do what this program said. So that meant that for 8 months I was housebound, and I was only able to start walking like 5 steps down the drive and things like that. So I was really pretty severe. And God did a lot of work on me in those years that I couldn't do anything much except pray, and I'd lay on the floor with the Bible most of the day. And in order to go on the treatment program, because I had to sign up that I would only do what they said, that meant I couldn't go shopping or cooking or things like that. And a lady from the church I was at the time, she took it upon herself to help with that, and she made food for me for 6 months.
Wow, that's commitment, isn't it?
Faithfully. And then another lady from the community came and cleaned the house. And I was just blown away with that. And it enabled me to get better.
That's lovely. That's great, yeah. So gratitude is really important. Just like the testimonies you've recalled times past, it encourages your soul and just reminds you that there is hope. So just a challenge, maybe this week, every day this week, write down one thing that you are thankful for, that you're grateful for, because gratitude keeps hope alive. I could keep watching that one. Have you ever seen kids? Have you seen the gorilla on the screen? Anyway. But in praying also, praying is important. It's praying for hope daily as well. Philippians 4:6-7 says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, present your requests to God." So whatever we're feeling, present our requests to God, and God will give us hope for the future and in the situation. And no matter, put up, hope does not deny the darkness. It shines in it. So we don't just say, oh, everything's okay, and just try to just put it at the back of our mind. Life is real. Life is life. And sometimes it is jolly tough. Acknowledge it, but then find hope in it. So no matter what we're facing, God is your light, my strength, and my future. And this also goes for things that you've just coming back to Joseph. There may be some dreams that you have had, things that you've longed for on your heart, but and they may seem dead, but dead dreams can live. And there's many examples in the Bible, even in this room here, of dreams that you've had. You've waited, but they have come to fruition. So let us hold on to hope. No matter what you're facing, God is your light, your strength, and your future. And there is hope in the darkness. And I did bring this. I bought it off. Do you ever buy some things and it didn't quite match up to what you wanted it to do? This was such a purchase. It came late last night, then I found it was solar powered and there was not enough light and it's supposed to go round, and I thought, oh, it'd be great illustration. But hope is like a lighthouse, a light in the darkness. that shines for all to see. So let our light shine in the darkness. Amen. I forgot to do the... should we have a go with... We're going to get the kids forward now. So we had a look at Noah earlier on, and he must have been very bold and very, very strong, very courageous to do what he did when everyone laughed at him. So, Guy, have we got a song about that?
Thanks for listening to the Northgate Church podcast. Find out more at northgate.org.uk or find us on social media by searching Northgate Church Chester.